we are going to make a 6-layer dessert. So we're going to start with the crust, which is the bottom. I have a half a cup of margarine that's melted. You could use butter, whatever you have on hand. And then I have 1 cup of flour and 2 tablespoons of sugar and half a cup of chopped nuts. I just have walnuts because that's what I have on hand. You can use almonds or any other kind of nuts. And we're just going to mix this together. Shouldn't take long. With the melted margarine, it'll mix quickly. All right, and we are going to press this into a 9 by 13 pan. I've greased my pan just to be sure that it'll be able to come out when we're done. So I'm going to put this in a 350-degree oven for, I think, 15 minutes, 10 to 15. I'll check on how dark it gets. You don't want it to get too dark, so you want it to be nice and golden. So we're going to get this pressed into the pan and in the oven. Alright, just wanted to show you what that looks like just before I put it in the oven. It's quite a thin layer, so I've just got that all pressed into the pan, so if you can tell inside, it's just very thin. And I'm going to get that in the oven to bake. Alright, it's the 10-minute mark. It's not very dark yet. I just want to get more golden, so I'm going to put it in another 5 minutes, so that will be up to 15 minutes total. Alright, so it's been in the oven for 15 minutes. You can see it's just starting to get a little bit golden around the edges, so that's perfect. We now need to let this cool completely before we put the next layer on. But in the meantime, we can start working on some of our next layers while this cools. So layer 2 of our dessert is 1 block of cream cheese. So that's your 250 gram or 8-ounce block of cream cheese. I just softened that a little bit in the microwave. It blends better. And I have 1 cup of icing sugar. And I'm going to mix these up, and I want it to be nice and creamy. So we're going to just whip this for a couple minutes. I'll scrape my bowl because it tends to stick to the sides. So I'm going to cream for about 30 seconds, and then I'll scrape the sides and cream and scrape and cream and scrape. So I'll probably do that for a couple minutes. I just wanted to try to get all these lumps out. I see I have a couple stubborn lumps in there, but it's all smooth and creamy. So this is what's going to be your second layer. So once your base has cooled completely, we're going to put on the cream cheese layer, but it's a bit too warm yet from the oven, so I'm just going to let that cool completely before I put this layer on. So I'm going to put this layer aside. And then while I'm working on all this, I'm going to also whip up my whipping cream, which will be the next layer. So I'm going to do 500 mils of whipping cream with about 2 tablespoons of sugar and whip that up so that I can just start getting my layers all together, and we'll assemble it all at the end. Alright, so our base has cooled. It's just room temperature right now. And I'm going to do my second layer, which is the cream cheese and icing sugar that I mixed in the mixer. So that's your second layer that you're going to put on. And just spread that evenly. And then the next layer, so you whipped up your whipping cream, and we're going to use half of the whipping cream for this third layer, and then we're going to be saving some of our whipping cream for the top layer. So we're going to take about half of our whipping cream, and that is our third layer. Just take your time, trying not to mix your layers. just be gentle. Don't press too hard. And then our fourth layer is going to be our chocolate pudding. So I have just instant chocolate pudding. Instead of using the 2 cups that the package says, we're only going to use 1.5 cups of milk because you want this to firm up in the fridge. And if you do use the full amount of milk, the pudding will be too liquidy. So that's our third layer there. And now we are going to go to our pudding, chocolate pudding, which is already starting to firm up just while I'm talking. So I'm going to have to try and spread this nice and thin as well. I'll stop the video here because this is just going to take me a minute to spread this out because this was starting to firm up already. Alright, so that was very hard to spread just because my pudding sat for a few minutes before I put it on. So definitely, immediately after you mix up your pudding with the 1.5 cups of milk, pour it on right away before it even has a chance to do any firming up. It'll be much easier to spread on. Alright, so the next layer is going to be vanilla pudding. Same thing, as soon as you mix up your vanilla pudding, you can pour that on. There has been no vanilla pudding in the stores, the instant pudding, so I had to do some cooked vanilla pudding here. There's just, I don't know why there's a shortage in the stores. I've been looking for the past week and a half and there's nothing anywhere. So I'm going to get my cooked vanilla pudding, or you can use your instant, and that's going to be my next layer that I'm going to spread on. So this might take a little bit to spread on as well. Not as bad as the chocolate because it's still a little bit, it's at room temperature. It's not cold. So I'm going to get this layer spread on, and then I'll show you what that looks like before I put my last layer on. Alright, if you prefer the taste of cooked pudding over the instant, go ahead, make cooked pudding instead. It is a bit easier to spread. Just make sure instead of using the 3 cups of milk with the cooked pudding that you use about 2.25 to 2.5 cups of milk instead, because you do want that to be able to get firm. And then our final layer is going to be the rest of the whipping cream that we did not put on layer 3. So this is what's left over from layer 3. And we're going to spread this one on. Just try to get a nice thin layer. I'll show you what that looks like once we got the whole layer spread on. So I've got the whipping cream layer on, and I'm just going to decorate it with a little bit of chocolate hail so it looks pretty on top. And now you're going to let this go sit in the fridge for about 4 hours. You just want all the layers to be able to firm up, especially that cream cheese layer and the pudding layers. You want it all to meld together nice so that it'll be easier to slice these into squares. All right, so give that one a try. It's a very nice dessert.